All right, I'm going to be giving you a little bit of demo about how to go about this next project. And we're going to be dealing with charcoal. And charcoal specifically that we're looking at comes in two types, and you're going to need both. The first type is it's cylindrical. It usually comes in longer sticks. Sometimes you can get a package like this, but you'll find it in a variety of vine or willow is the name of it, charcoal. So you can get either or. It's very cheap, very inexpensive, very lightweight, and this is literally like carbon vines or what is left over. The second charcoal usually comes in something like this called compressed charcoal. You can get just one stick of it, it's fine, and you can usually tell it's different because it itself is square or rectangular, where the other stuff is in a tube. So you're gonna need both of those. You're also gonna need a gum eraser, nothing new or special about that. You've probably already been using those. And then one that we haven't talked about before, which is a kneaded eraser. And the kneaded eraser, also pretty cheap, looks just kind of like a piece of gum. And you can take this, and it's meant to be sort of stretched out and sort of worked in place. The idea is that you can form this into sort of any shape needed when you're going to be doing some of your corrections. I like to point out that in these projects, you are using the eraser as a drawing tool, not as an instrument to fix mistakes. So I really love charcoal for sort of its intimacy. And with that, we're going to do a couple things. The first thing I'm going to show you is how to tone the paper. And toning the paper is a very classical method. It's how the classical Renaissance masters would have begun a painting or even a drawing, is by toning out the entire white surface. That white surface is really impeding to our eyes as to what's really happening in nature. Plus, once we have that whole surface toned, we can then use our erasers and compressed charcoal to really build out some other darker and lighter tones. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to go through a quick little demo. That is one of your assignments in your syllabus, where you need to draw some cones, spheres, and those basic shapes in their forms. And then I'm going to give you the basic of the still life that you can set up on your own, and it can sort of encompass what you want. So the first thing I want to show you is how to tone the paper. And what you need to do is take, something of your vine charcoal. I like to use a lot of the smaller broken pieces that don't fit well in your hand. And what you want to do is go over your entire 18 by 24 piece of paper. Now you don't have to worry about borders or anything like that. And you're not pressing hard, you're just getting something on that surface. All right, and now you can come back in and work that material, that charcoal, into the surface of the paper. Okay, so I'm pushing it around, I'm kind of pushing it down into all the fibers of the paper, so that way this paper is kind of basically saturated with that charcoal. It's also getting my hand nice and filthy. And the reason why that's a good thing is because when we start touching this paper, right, if I have a clean hand and I touch, I'll leave my fingerprints. You can kind of see one right there. So I actually want my hands just a little bit grubby, so that way when I start drawing, it's a little bit easier. Now, because this thing is toner rubbing, make sure that you're on a surface that doesn't leave any marks or paper edges. Or I put down a little bit of paper as what we call packing, so that way I'm not picking up any relief from the surface that I'm rubbing on. Now for this example, I'm going to just put this here real quick so we can see it. You will need on this project a really nice direct light source. Just give yourself one light source, like a desk lamp, and turn all the rest of the lights off in the room, right, so that you can control what's going on. And with this, though, we have 6 areas of light that you have to achieve in order to achieve a sense of naturalism. The first is going to be a light source. So once you have your light source set, you'll be able to now say, well, where is it hitting the hardest, right? And that's where you see the lightest spot. Now this whole area is not completely white. There's actually just one little area that has a highlight. And then I also have a bunch of midtones. And then down here, you can kind of see, this is where the light is trying to bend and it can't anymore. So it's kind of coming off and coming off the surface in several ways, but light doesn't have enough energy to like move itself around, right? So that's where the light is ending, and we have this core shadow band that's happening around here. Then notice how it gets what seems to be a little bit lighter down here before we get to our cast shadow, right? If I move this, right, we can see that that shadow goes away. So I have a cast shadow. Now the cast shadow itself is probably the darkest on this particular object, but it's not always the darkest, okay? So those are the 6 areas of light: your light source, your highlight, your midtones, your core shadow, reflected light, and cast shadow, right? So if you got to write all those down, that's what you need to have to achieve this. Now I'm going to move this just a little bit out of the way, and I'm going to draw for you. So what's really cool about charcoal is that if you always draw with your vine charcoal at first. You don't need to do anything else yet, right? And you're always looking for those basic shapes, okay? So when I'm drawing this, the basic shape of that sphere, of course, is a circle. Now you notice I put a lot of lines down. I'm not worried about perfect lines yet. The reason being is that I like to give myself a lot of information down, and then I can come back in, and whichever ones I like, right, I can smooth away the rest. So you can see really quickly, my finger really is the eraser, and now I can leave the ones that I like, okay? Now I know that my light source is coming from that direction, and when I look at the model, I can see that right around in that area of it is where the highlight's gonna be. So I'm just kind of marking that for now. Now, as that light moves around the surface, this is where I see that core shadow and that band, okay? And then I'm gonna have reflected light, and then down here, right, I'm gonna have my cast shadow. So using this vine charcoal, I've just gone around and given myself just a quick sketch of where that light's gonna be, okay? Now I can come back in and sort of refine this. I know by looking at it that this is a little bit bigger. Notice how I'm doing it in an arc, right? A shadow on a whatever object it's on, it has to bend to the shape of that object. This is a sphere, so things are gonna arc. If it was a box, I would have more flat planes. Up here, this is where my light is gonna be. Okay, so I can pull that out, okay? That's where I keep going. Now, also on mine, and I'm gonna use the eraser because my midtones need to be lighter up here. And you'll see that instead of using my initial contour line, I'm gonna use the eraser to create the edge. And because our paper is toned, any mark that I make now really stands out nicely. I'm going to clean this up. And I'm not using this eraser, and I'm just smashing it now in my hand just to, as it fills up with charcoal, I can do that. I'm not using this to erase, I'm just using it to pull away some of the material to get at the tone that I want. Okay. So now I can see this form starting to develop, and as long as my finger has a little bit of that charcoal still left on it, I can kind of use it as a drawing utensil as well, and I can continue to refine this subject, making it a little bit better each time. All right, a little bit smoother. So it's a little bit of finger painting. It's a little bit like being in kindergarten, but you'll find that it has a lot more expression in it than, let's say, something like the pen and ink that we've been looking at. Okay, now I need something that goes a little bit dark. That's really as dark as the vine charcoal can go. So that's where now I've switched to my compressed charcoal, and I identify the darkest source first, which was the cast shadow. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to start rubbing that in. Okay. And immediately, and I left a little bit right, you can see sort of the extra life that's coming out of that. Now here, it looks a little bit too of the same, and core shadows are usually an area that are fairly dark. And if I need to, I can exaggerate this shadow even a little bit more, making it a little bit darker. So that way, I create this thing. smear that in. I have really clear delineation between those light midtones that are up here, the core shadow in the middle. Now you can begin to see that little bit of reflected light. You notice I didn't erase that. I let all of that material just sort of build up there, and we can see it because I put that really dark cast shadow there. Okay, so there's my sphere. I would spend some more time. I'd probably come back, put a little bit more material up here just to sort of get that highlight to come back into play. All right, so I can see that highlight just slowly start to emerge again, and you can continually adjust the values as you need to. This is assignment, I think they're like number 10 or something like that in the syllabus, and you need to draw a sphere, you need to draw a cone, you need to draw a cylinder and a box. So find just household items that meet those descriptions and do them like this in your sketchbook, okay?